This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Are you a professional pillow fighter? Or a 9-to-5 low-cost time travel agent? Or maybe real estate sales on Mars is your profession? It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you do, however complex or intricate, Monday.com can help you organize, orchestrate, and make it more efficient. Monday.com is the one centralized platform for everything work-related. And with Monday.com, work is just easier. Monday.com, for whatever you run. Go to Monday.com to learn more.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic, and today I am delighted to be joined by Stephen Cohan, who is the Professor who is
Oh, you got to edit that.
No, that's staying in. I was getting too big for my boots there. I knew it. He was the professor at Syracuse University, New York, and he is now retired, but he is the author of many books on film, and he is continuing to write. And we're going to be talking about a new book about Audrey Hepburn, which you've sort of subtitled Audrey Hepburn, An Opinionated View.
It's called it's on Audrey Hepburn, an opinionated guide.
An opinionated guide, that's it. So, Stephen, can we talk about that title, that subtitle? Why the opinionated guide?
Thank you for inviting me to chat with you. Oxford University Press has a series of opinionated guides on various celebrities, performers. So I'm working with this series, but it allowed me to be more personal in my writing, in terms of talking Hepburn's own affect on me, or my affect in watching her is more accurate. So I used that trope of opinionated guide. There are books on Streisand, Sondheim, Monroe. One of the things that happened while writing is that I had forgotten how much I really liked Hepburn, which is where the sort of personal side of my study enters at several points.
I mean, what is your relationship with Audrey Hepburn to begin with? Where did you sort of first encounter her?
In the movie Funny Face,
right?
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
In the theaters. And then I saw The Nun Story. And as I talk about in the opening of the book, the appeal of her voice in particular, as I responded to, which is one reason I'm very ambivalent about My Fair Lady, where her singing is dubbed and it doesn't really sound like her. I was a big movie fan when I was young. So there were a lot of stars I really liked. And when I chose her, I hadn't really thought about Hepburn in a long time. I've taught Funny Face and I've written on Funny Face. That was the only real Hepburn that I've been engaged with more recently. So writing the book revived a lot of memories, which I forgot I had, about watching her films, about reading about her. And I rediscovered that she was a favorite actress of mine.
It's so funny how that happens, isn't it? That you sometimes
is.
lose somebody and then they come back to you.
Well, it's also because she's been deceased for many, many years, and she did not do a lot of films really after her first retirement. But my goodness, when Robin and Marian opened, I saw it at Radio City Music Hall because I really liked her. And Charade was a really favorite film of mine, which I have seen a couple times. I've never taught it or written on it before, but I have seen it. So writing the book was very pleasurable because it was a moment of rediscovery of her films, films that I really liked, or films that I had problems with, like Love in the Afternoon, which I talk about as a problem because of the casting of Cooper. In contrast, say, to Wilder's Sabrina. I mean, the other thing that dovetailed with writing on Hepburn was Billy Wilder, because I had finished a book on Sunset Boulevard, was going to write one on Some Like It Hot. So Wilder is a thread that ties all this together. And Sabrina, I think, is a real important film for the book because I use it to really establish and crystallize her persona and the various elements that I then talk about in great detail.
Going back to you discovering her, going and seeing her at the cinema, could you tell us a little bit about your relationship to movies and sort of how important movies were to you growing up, and then how it moved into being something of a career?
I grew up with parents who went to the movies all the time. In the 40s and early 50s, really before television, although we were one of the first families they got television rather quickly. They would sometimes go twice a week to the movies. So movies were always very present in my household. And generally speaking, I would go every Saturday or Sunday afternoon to the movies. So I grew up in the 50s as a kid. So I saw a lot of movies when they first came out in the 50s. And then in the 60s, we moved to Los Angeles, which is a very movie culture. And I would go to it was the original Motion Picture Academy library. And I would read Variety every week and go to the movies all the time. And my friend and I, this was before home video, if we would go opening day, I'm talking about in high school, and we would sit through a movie twice, get our money's worth. And I would see some movies I liked repeatedly. I don't do that as much anymore, but
what would be an example of a movie that you sort of you found yourself obsessed with and you watched multiple times?
Well, Hepburn's Two for the Road, which I saw five times during its long run in Los Angeles. Another film that I really liked, and all my friends, Carl Reise's Isadora with Vanessa Redgrave opened. Its premiere engagement was in LA. In a road show, 3 hours, and I knew they were cutting it, and we would go. It had like a 6-week run, and I think I saw it 4 or 5 times during that run before they cut it. But otherwise, if I liked a movie, aside from seeing it 2 times in a row, back to back, I'd go see it when it opened in second run. And then there was television with movies. My mom and I I'd come home from high school and we'd watch the early show. Then when first run movies were shown in prime time in the US, I saw a lot of older movies that way. And now I'm old enough that I can't remember when I first saw films that are very important to me and were important in my career, like Singing in the Rain. I've written a lot on the musical, and I just don't remember when I saw certain films if I didn't see them first in a movie theater, and which is why I remember Funny Face. Funny Face, I love to stare. I love dancing. I never forgot having seen Funny Face, which also has a pride of place in my book too.
And there's a purity to that sort of cinematic musical as well.
And Hepburn made a couple musical, which was also a link to other scholarship. And I do also remembered The Nun's Story, which I had a memory of being very fascinated by it as a young Jewish kid. And I've not really thought about it in decades. And when I rewatched it for the book, I was impressed anew by it. It's a really, really, it's an interesting film because it isn't very plotted. I mean, it's episodic and it's long, but it's, I think, a very important film in Hepburn's career.
It's kind of a departure for her as well. She's doing something which is, you know, a step away from what you call the Audrey.
It was
pictures.
at a moment at the end of the 50s when she was expanding her range. Where, I mean, she did the same year that Nun's Story came out, she did Green Mansions, which did not work. That her husband, Mel Ferrer, directed that. And then she did Breakfast at Tiffany's, which I relate to her persona as a sort of reversal of it in ways. In the first half of the film, I talk about it at great length. And then she did the Children's Hour. And then the point I make when I turn to Charade is that when she was in her mid-30s, she really changed the persona somewhat, in that she was acting in thrillers where she moves the plot. But one of the threads in my book is how she's an agent plot-wise in almost all of her films, which I think is a way of reading against the more conventional conservative patriarchal narratives given her the casting opposite older men, which is both typical of the 50s and also, I think, distinctive of her filmography.
Well, let's go back to sort of her biographical background as well, because I think I always had this feeling when I was watching her that I always perceived her Englishness or her Europeanness because of the accent, that very that modulated way of speaking which you talk about. So maybe we should talk a little bit about her upbringing and how she sort of arrived in America as this slightly otherworldly character.
She was never an American. She only came to the U.S. to make a film. I'm going to go backwards. I'll get back to her birth and upbringing in a moment. But so during her career, she lived in Switzerland for the most part until her second marriage, when she moved to Rome and then returned to Switzerland. And she made a lot of films in Paris. So when she was in LA or New York, she was in New York to film locations, scenes for Tiffany's. She was basically a renter. She never was an American citizen. Right. Her father was British. Her mother was Dutch. She was born in Belgium. She was sent, after her parents separated, she was sent to a boarding school in England where she learned English. She returned shortly before the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands and was instructed not to speak English, but to speak Dutch. Because of the conflict and the British people were the enemy of Germany and vice versa. She spoke French and Italian, and so there's one point in my book where I quote her from a biography where she said that it's because she never really had one language as a ground that accounted for what critics sometimes complained about her voice or noted about the distinction of her voice. Okay. Then she moved to London with her mother in 1948, where she wanted to be a ballet dancer, but had started serious study too late because her study was interrupted by the war. And so she performed in British musicals as a chorus girl, and also did some photographic modeling, and had bit parts in British films until she was basically discovered not by William Wyler for Roman Holiday, but by Colette for the stage play Gigi. So then she went to Broadway, where she was, the production was not universally applauded, but she was. And at that point, she had, right before she had done the screen test that got her the role in Roman Holiday. And that was really her big star-making role. But then she, after making Roman Holiday, she returned to Broadway for Undine, which won her the Tony. So she won a Tony and an Oscar the same year. I mean, what's interesting are the number of awards and nominations that she got, because a lot of people then and now never considered her a serious or even very good actress, that just a screen personality.
Well, you have an entire chapter dedicated to justifying her, arguing very cogently and very persuasively that, of course, she is a great actress. And
that's right.
It's kind of interesting that you need to assert that, because I do feel her reputation that for the last, say, 20, 30 years has been more as an icon than as an actress. And I think that
I agree.
That's a problem, really. As famous as she is, it's a problem reducing someone to that sort of inanimate poster girl rather than.
But I think that's typical of a lot of stars of her generation and generations before, because movie star acting was not meant to call attention to acting. I mean, there were actresses like Bette Davis, where being an actress was part of her persona, in contrast, say, to Joan Crawford, who was a good actress herself, but was never, this is part of the backstory of whatever happened to Baby Jane, and the feud between them that it has gotten mythified. But she was considered an icon of glamour in the 30s in particular, and a great screen presence. But fan magazine articles about her and the publicity never called attention to training or skill, in contrast, say, to someone like Davis. So many stars like Hepburn were not presented as actors, but it was during the 50s when stars like Brando, Montgomery Clift, Julie Harris, Shelley Winters were known for being trained in various methods, and it was all generalized as the method. And since then, serious stars like De Niro and Streep are known for acting. So it's both peculiar to Hepburn, and it's partly because she's iconic because of her association with fashion and style, and I think foreignness, the French aspect of her life, her association with Paris, her living in Switzerland, etc., and her association with Givenchy. But it's also continuous with other stars. I mean, Marilyn Monroe tried to break out of that in the mid-50s by going to New York and studying with the Actors Studio. But even now, people will talk about her glamour, her sexual presence, and really not pay attention to the nuance of her comedic acting.
Absolutely. And what a fine actress she was, fine talented actress.
That's right.
Was. It's kind of like also it fed into the myth of the studios just discovering people. If they discovered people and, they're a natural, you're a star, it meant, they couldn't say, and you actually trained for this. And, you point out something I never knew before, that Hepburn appears, I think, is it in an Alfred Hitchcock film?
Well, she was going to.
Right.
It fell apart. And there are various accounts of why it fell apart. One account, it was called No Bail for the Judge. And the plot was she's the daughter, I can't remember if it was a barrister or a solicitor. No, he's a judge. Her father's a judge who's accused of murder. He was going to be played by Olivier. And then Lawrence Harvey was going to play the lawyer who is representing him, and supposedly there was going to be some sexual violence imposed on her by the script, and she backed off, and then the other two actors backed off because she was out of the picture. But the other story I read was that Paramount, which was going to make the film with Hitchcock, could not get the rights to film on location in the London courts, which they wanted. So there's The script, I haven't seen the script. I've just read about it. But the film fell apart, and instead Hitchcock made Psycho, which is interesting.
It's not a bad film. No,
No, not a bad film, but given Hepburn's supposed reluctance to proceed because of the sexual violence, it seems like it was on his mind.
Yeah. It's not, that doesn't surprise me at all. That doesn't surprise me in the least. I think she might have dodged a bullet there.
I do, although it would be interesting. I mean, she's not a typical Hitchcock blonde by any means, but it would be interesting to see her in a Hitchcock type thriller. I mean, she made one with
Well, I was going to say
Charade.
Charade is I mean, you quote somebody saying that it's the best Hitchcock film Hitchcock never made.
Right. And I found it interesting to write about. In part, in some ways, I also talk about how her performance controls all of the tonal shifts, because it's so the script is actually nuanced in the way it shifts from screwball to thriller to romance, and her performance controls those shifts, I argue. But it also is a gender reversal of a film like North by Northwest, in particular, given the casting of Cary Grant, who's playing the Eva Marie Saint part, and she's playing the Cary Grant part.
Well, let's go back a little bit to the Audrey films, as you call them, starting with Roman Holiday and going on to Sabrina. I love the description you have of the famous Mouth of Truth scene, which never fails to crack me up whenever I see it, where Gregory Peck famously improvised losing his hand. And her reaction is priceless. I mean, it's her reaction not only of original surprise, but as you point out, of her getting over the surprise, which sells the scene.
Right. And I mean, I talk about that in terms of her timing, because even if it is a reaction and not acting, there's her timing in her response is I think consistent with her timing, her deliberated timing as a performer in other scenes. And given the different shots, I doubt that scene wasn't shot in different moments, either before or after that surprise. But there is one point where in her dialogue where Peck says to her, "Are you all right?" As if it's Peck reassuring himself that he hasn't scared Hepburn to death.
He's gone too far. He's gone too far.
That's
with
right.
this.
And right. And that she can't get out fast enough from the cave.
Yeah, it's a brilliant film and absolutely delightful and worthy of the reputation it has.
And it's interesting as the first of her Audrey films, because the Audrey film I define as through a Cinderella template, and increasingly where fashion becomes more and more important as transformation, and that her persona is a liminal persona who's neither here nor there, like the character she plays in Funny Face and in My Fair Lady. And then I look at Love in the Afternoon and Breakfast at Tiffany's as variations on that template. So Roman Holiday is interesting because it is intentionally a reversal of a Cinderella narrative. It opens, as I point out, at the ceremony where she's greeting all of the ambassadors and diplomats while in Rome, and she loses her shoe and finds it herself, unbeknownst to anyone because it's under her long gown, which really shows her agency. And at the end, though she kisses Peck, they separate. It's a process of her discovering really her empowerment as a royal through the course of this film. So it's an interesting film when put in the Cinderella template in that way, which is why I don't begin with it. I begin with Sabrina, which has that fairy tale voiceover opening right after the main credits. You know, this is once upon a time there was this young woman, and so forth. And that also, and I think Sabrina really crystallized her fame, and her persona for the 50s and how people read her in the 50s.
And also in relationship to her relationship with fashion, because it's on this film that she goes across to Paris and contacts Givenchy for the costumes.
Right. And her association with Paris, because Paris is what transforms Sabrina into a sophisticated young woman.
So it's almost meta in that sense that she as an actress is doing what Sabrina as a character will do in the film.
Exactly.
The costumes caused some consternation with the studio because Edith Head obviously is this huge, powerful figure in the studios at this point. And it even appears on film in certain movies to show off her Oscars and things like that.
And is evoked in the Invincibles, the animated film. There's an Edith Head figure. I mean, yes. So she personified costuming for the movies. At this point, she was under contract to Paramount. So every Paramount film sort of went through her studio. And Givenchy didn't get credit for the fashions in Sabrina, much to Hepburn's consternation. But they were the ones that caused so much tension, and Head won the Oscar for the costumes. And what's really interesting, I saw a clip of her acceptance on YouTube, and she doesn't thank anybody. Off mic, she thanks the presenters and then walks off stage. I mean, she was a very, very self-possessed woman. But she and Hepburn were close, and she liked working with Hepburn. And I've read different accounts of the costumes the designs that she brought back, whether she just brought back blueprints, which would have meant that Head's department would have made them, whether she brought back the actual clothes, which would have meant that they'd have to be fitted for her.
Right. And
whether or not she may have brought back 3 different outfits, but they had to be duplicated because costumes were done in two or three versions of the same, 2 or 3 copies, because they'd get soiled during a scene. They could rip, and so forth. I don't think, I mean, one, as a movie fan, one may have an impression that there's one dress that Hepburn wears throughout, but there probably were a couple different copies of that dress.
Absolutely. Indiana Jones has about 20 hats during the film. He does take one.
Probably has more than one whip too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have with Sabrina Fair, we also have Sabrina, we have the idea that that she's being paired with a sort of significantly older man. I mean, I think with Gregory Peck, you don't think of it to the same degree.
That's right.
But with Humphrey Bogart, there is a real feeling of like he is. It's not only that he's from the 40s. He's from the 30s, 40s.
Yeah, I think it works. Wilder had wanted Cary Grant, but Cary Grant never worked for Wilder. I mean, he always ended up deferring or declining. And
that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I wonder
it is. The closest Wilder got to working with Cary Grant was Tony Curtis's Cary Grant voice in Some Like It Hot.
Very, very. That's a very good. Nobody talks like that.
That's right. You do it better than I do. But I think it works. And I compare it with, or contrast it actually, with Love in the Afternoon. Right. And I think it works in Sabrina because William Holden mediates the two age-wise. And one can believe that Holden is a fitting consort for Hepburn, as indeed in real life he was at the time. They had an affair while making the film. And in plot terms, one can see Bogart's character as a reputable version of the rascally character that Holden plays. But also, I think Wilder plays safer with Bogart than he does with Cooper in terms of love scenes. So one doesn't call us attention to it. Bogart also was a romantic lead, but he always looked like a character actor. He never seemed to age that much from the 40s in that regard. And he himself had married a very, very young girl in a celebrated romance that has become mythic with Lauren Bacall.
Right.
Whereas in Love in the Afternoon, where there's the same age difference, Cooper looks much older. And the third co-star is Chevalier, who plays her father, who looks, the two of them look like the same generation. They probably were. They both started in Paramount Films in the 30s when Chevalier came to the U.S. And I find that to be much creepier in terms of the age difference than in Sabrina. This tone of the two films also differ. But this isn't to say that the older co-stars aren't a problem that may turn people off from some of Hepburn's films. I find Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady to look much, much older than her, even though she's in her early 30s at the time, playing a much younger character. Henry Fonda in War and Peace, particularly when one thinks about the ages of the characters in Tolstoy's novel. So there are, as I said, it's typical of the 50s. There are a number of young actresses, young ingenues, who star opposite older men. This is a problem with Astaire as well, when he's opposite, and Gene Kelly when they're both opposite Leslie Caron, or Debbie Reynolds in Singing in the Rain with Gene Kelly. I think they're both, in terms of the musical, I think both Kelly and Astaire are much better matched with Sid Charisse, where you don't see as much you don't feel that great age distance between them. And I think with Astaire and Funny Face, he also was never a conventionally gorgeous looking man the way Cooper was in his youth. He's so physical as a dancer that he seems younger than he probably really is. That's one of the virtues of dancing. But there are I think after the Nun story, or even before the Nun story, it's the age difference is not as great starting in the very late 50s, except in Charade. And Grant was aware of the age difference. And so his one request before signing was that the script be revised so that she's making the moves on him, as opposed to the man making the moves on her.
It is such a consistent thing with those films from the 50s, especially, that I remember watching these films when I was very young, and it never occurred to me to be a problem until much later in rewatching them that you start to realize, because it's just such a convention. Male leads all look like John Wayne, and
it's not
William
only a
Holden.
convention, I think, but it's generational. That it's a convention in the 50s and 60s and just taken for granted, as opposed to watching them as a younger person today, when that convention really has shifted. Although there are still many older stars who star opposite younger actresses in movies today. There is a slight reversal with stars like Sandra Bullock, whose co-stars like Channing Tatum in her recent film are much younger and in rom-coms. But still, I think a younger generation would have more problems. So it's interesting how many young people adore Hepburn in those films. And I think it's because there are other pathways into the film that allow you to disregard that asymmetrical casting.
Ready to pop the question? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds, and they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code LISTEN to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code LISTEN at BlueNile.com for $50 off. BlueNile.com, code LISTEN.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
Like fashion, which I emphasize in terms of her movement, that fashion is not only a symbol of transformation of the character, but she moves in clothes. It's about energy.
Do you think it's because as well that because of the fashion and because of the focus not being really on the romantic relationship to that extent? I mean, there's something that they are like rom-coms, but they are kind of almost like asexual rom-coms. You know, you don't really, I even thought as late as Breakfast at Tiffany's, you have a film which I watched a number of times before I realized, maybe I'm a bit dense, but before I realized that she's essentially a sex worker. Because it just seems so innocent and so blithe, and you in your reading of it, there's this brilliant talk of the party at the beginning, and you talk about a queer reading of the party of George Peppard and another character going into a bathroom. And it could almost exactly. It could almost be an assignation, and he's kind of it was more clear that he was a prostitute than she was.
Well, and she has dialogue that she says that when she says, I'm not judging. How much are you getting paid weekly, hourly, monthly? I'm not judging because she's the same. I mean, this is that sort of liminality. One of the points I make about about the co-stars and in the Audrey film is that in many respects, the character is intrigued by the older male because he has a sexual experience that she lacks, that she wants, and Love in the Afternoon is about her living through fantasies of having one lover after another, which she's borrowing from her private detective father's case files. In that film, and this is a pivotal moment for my reading, when she goes to save him from, if you call the setup, is that she hears the husband of his lover threatening to go kill him, and she goes to warn him, and she climbs up to the second or third floor, and looks through the patio doors or the balcony doors rather, and there's a look of amazement, where it's like it's like a primal scene for her. And the same thing happens in Sabrina when she, as the young girl who's infatuated with William Holden, where she follows him from the party where he has an assignation with Gretchen on the tennis court. This is before she goes to Paris, the night before she leaves, actually. And she looks in with amazement again at what's going on. So there's a sense of her innocence that the attraction to the older man is as a teacher, as an instructor, or as a surrogate, which is why I think you don't sense, as you said, a full erotic charge. It's a different kind of eros in that respect. And in Breakfast at Tiffany's, one of the points I make is that Holly Golightly is, in a sense, the Audrey figure's fantasy come to life, that she's sexually liberated. At the same time, she's innocent. I mean, that the character and the performance allows one to straddle both readings of the character simultaneously. Because she is a prostitute in that she's taking $50 from the men and then another 50 for a taxi. And on the one hand, there's a sense that they never have sex. She just takes the money. On the other, there is that guy that is waiting for her outside her apartment in the opening. And then another guy who's in her apartment, which is when she escapes through the window and goes up to Peppard's apartment, which indicates well, then she has been having sex. I mean, there's a real sexual ambiguity about Holly that I think is part of the attractiveness. I saw it when it first came out in the theaters. I don't remember exactly what I thought about it. And like you, I I didn't have a full sense that she was the sort of prostitute in Capote's story.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It
just
took,
thought she looked good in clothes.
well, precisely, and she
and is wacky and campy.
exactly, and has that cigarette lighter and a cigarette holder.
Right. And the image of her at that party when she first comes out and she has, I think it's a bedspread or sheet that she's wearing and she's polishing her nails. She's holding a little thing of nail polish. And she comes out and then she goes back and then comes out dressed. That she's wacky and kooky and sophisticated without a sexual basis. At the same time, there's a sexual basis that is supporting her, the character, that's her mode of income. So there is a way that she's equally paired with Papard, who's using Patricia Neal to support him. And he's a hypocrite because he wants Holly to be pure and he wants to save her which is the turn in the film, I think, where it becomes very conventional and undoes everything that it has achieved in the first half of the film.
Yeah, and it feels that in that turn, it also it will be replicated by many films which set up something quite radical and then get scared and head back to conformity as quickly as they possibly can.
Well, I never pay that much attention to endings except to notice that function. I went to films during the era of continuous showings where I was taught you walk in wherever you walk in, you sort of make a mental note so you know when to leave.
Right.
So I don't remember what films I don't think I saw North by Northwest from beginning to end. I think I came in the middle and then saw the beginning before at the end. I mean, so there's an interesting way, I think, that if you watch when you were a generation trained to watch films that way, do not pay as close attention to the ending except as a period, a period to a sentence.
Yes.
That a later generation that has been trained to see films from beginning to end may do. So there's a way in which the sort of subversiveness of a plot in the first half of a film may linger because it's the last thing you see. If one came in the middle of Breakfast at Tiffany's and then waited for it to begin again to see what you missed, what you missed was the subversive part. That's the part that would linger.
Oh, that's a fascinating way of thinking about it. I never really thought of that context of how people were watching movies at that stage. Also, one of the things that struck me as liminal reading your book, sort of liminal to her character, was that the idea that after having a few flops, and I know we're skipping over some films now, but having had a couple of flops, the idea that she just retires as well at a point where many would continue, when many would. There's this sense that just as she wasn't American, she wasn't living in America, she wasn't necessarily going to be fully committed to being a film star. It was just one of the things
which
that she would do.
retirement are you talking about? The first one after Wait Until Dark or the second?
The first one after Wait Until Dark.
Because I wouldn't call those flops.
No, you're right. I'm thinking of Bloodline, aren't I? The Sidney Sheldon,
right,
which is the second
that's
one.
The second.
Yes.
Right. And that's the point where she's 50.
Yes.
And it's an era where there is a whole crop of new actresses. There's Hollywood ageism. So even though she still had a rabid fan base, I found in a variety account of the first gross of Robin and Marion when it opened in Radio City, and it said, if the Hepburn fans show up, the film could run for 10 years or something like that. So there was still a perception of a large fan base, but the films were infrequent after Robin and Marion and undistinguished. And she, I think, lost interest in acting and became a representative for an ambassador, they called it, for UNICEF, and toured Africa and Asia, and to call attention to famine and the problem of starving children around the world. And at one point she came to speak to Congress for funding, but I also don't know what roles she could have played. I mean, Bloodline, she was cast after many of the younger actresses turned it down. And she is older than her character in the film, and the character was aged from the novel to suit her. And it's a really bad film.
I was going to say, you don't spare it. But let's talk about a couple of those later great films, because I think the film she did with Albert Finney and Stanley Donen, Two for the Road.
Two for the Road.
It's a really interesting, almost feels like an experimental film, the way it's edited and structured and put together. And then, of course, Robin and Marion it's the kind of film that is made these days, that idea of reimagining very, very famous, legendary figures, but reimagining them from a different perspective, not taking them on as real people. It's almost like what they did recently with Joker, where they think, okay, let's do a comic book hero, but as if it's a real person living in New York.
Right, but the difference is what happened to Robin and Marion when they got old. So it's a reimagining the myth in terms of middle age or older, which is why I think it didn't have wasn't a great success. I mean, it's a very interesting film. It's a sad film. It's elegiac in that respect, and her performance is really interesting.
Right.
As is Connery's. I mean, it's extremely well cast. What's interesting is that the director, Richard Lester, was known for making the two Beatle movies. And then Petulia, which is also, that's the one with Julie Christie and George C. Scott, and she's married to an abusive husband played by Richard Chamberlain. But it's an interesting sort of mismatch between a young director known for au courant type of fast editing and filming, and a bunch of older British actors, pretty much, playing these parts of older versions of mythic characters. So you're right. I mean, it predicts the kind of rebooting, refocusing of mythic figures, assuming one could call superhero mythic figures, which they are. And that's, I think, her last really good film. You didn't mention Wait Until Dark.
Yeah, let's talk about
Two for the Road, and Wait Until Dark is a really, really great film. I think she should have been nominated for Two for the Road if she was going to be nominated that year, which she herself thought. But it's still. When I rewatched it, I still jump when Alan Arkin jumps out, leaps out, and grabs her foot, or her ankle, in the dark. And her performance is really, really interesting. I mean, one of the things I think about the 60s films is that she really shows that she can act. I mean, Charade, as I talk about it, is a really polished performance. And it's a subtle performance in the way that, as I said, it shifts, it controls all of the tonal shifts in the film. Two for the Road is an amazing performance. And even in My Fair Lady, if you disregard the singing, her performance is really quite good. It's lively, energetic, spunky. she does not shy away from from showing a range of emotions. She gets angry at Higgins. She's stubborn. She's trying to control her life, which is why she goes to initiate being taught how to be like a proper lady in the first place, which is why I think I'm always disappointed in the film, because once she opens her mouth, it doesn't sound like Hepburn. And I think they could have used more technology that would have been available then to use more of her own singing, because she did all the pre-recordings, assuming that she was going to be singing and trained. So the roles that she plays in the 60s, with the exception of Paris When It Sizzles, which is another very problematic film, shall we say. I mean, it's interesting as a failure and a flop, which it was. She shows that she can really act. And I think the two films she does in 67, Two for the Road and Wait Until Dark, right before she retires, really prove this. They're different kinds of performances. In Two for the Road, in a way, she's performing the extent of her filmography up till then, because she begins as the young virgin when she meets Finney in the first road trip. And then by the end, she is the sophisticate that she was in real life in the 30s. And then Wait Until Dark, where she can't use the usual instruments of like her eyes, because she has to be blind for the entire film. So her face is much less mobile. Her voice is much more controlled until the end. If you think about the screaming that she does and the moaning when she discovers that she's been tricked, until finally when Arkin comes in and it's really the final battle between the two of them.
An astonishing film. Arkin is amazing in that. I think that's a real
he is, and he's so scary.
Yeah.
Oh, I know but it's such a fun. It's a really well done film, and it's so surprising because it was directed by Terrence Young, who directed Bloodline. And everyone just seemed sort of bored, like they just did Bloodline to get their paycheck, which is one reason I think Hepburn agreed, because she hadn't worked for 9 years and she needed the $1 million that she was going to get paid. Because I think she was either she'd already left her second husband or was about to when she did Bloodline. I think that marriage was over, which is another reason that she went back to work.
Turn over a new leaf, but not one that ended well. What do you think is her enduring legacy now? Do you feel that she will be reappraised as an actress? I mean, your book definitely has that argument, and it definitely pushes that argument. Do you think there's a movement to look at her films once more in a fresh light?
I don't know. I think the whole era of classic Hollywood cinema has become niche. I've been going to the Society for Cinema and Media Studies conferences for 20 years or more, and more than 20 years. I was president for 2 years. When I first started, classic Hollywood was dominant. And now it's very marginal, as film studies itself has become more global, more media and industry conscious. It's continuous now with what's called screen studies, because films are shown in so many different formats and venues. So I hesitate to predict. It's interesting with the AFI, when they did, although this was a while ago now, when they did their 50 greatest American actresses and 50 greatest American actors, or 50 great Hollywood, because not all of the performers were American. Hepburn was third. So I'm not certain that her association with fashion as an icon, it can be easily subtracted from her skill as an actress. There's also, I'm not certain at this stage in our culture whether the age difference with many of her co-stars turns people off, younger generations off her films. I know people love Breakfast at Tiffany's and My Fair Lady. Those are two of the two films that have a lot of currency, and a lot of it is for the clothing. I'm not certain that people who adore Breakfast at Tiffany's are necessarily as aware that they're adoring a character who's a prostitute. Although maybe they are. Sam Wasson's book on Breakfast at Tiffany's argues that it really hails the advent of Sex and the Single Girl. My only issue with that book is that it fails to appreciate the skill of her performance in The Nun Story, which it measures against Breakfast at Tiffany's to show that Holly is such a wonderful and nuanced and excellent performance. And that Nun Story is achieved through editing, because I don't think it is. But anyway, and so there is a sense in which the sexual freedom that Holly represents may be part of the iconic stature of that film. Other than that, I'm not great at predicting.
That's probably a wise decision, I guess.
I was asked yesterday, who do I think is going to win the U.S. election? I know. I'm not really good at predicting.
You're not going to put that on public record. I got everything wrong.
No, I'm not.
I got it wrong last time.
One of the things I find is that my predictions are often textured by my wishes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm not certain how scientific they are.
Absolutely. I had a friend of mine at the weekend who said, I know Trump's going to lose. I know it's going to lose. And I was like, don't dare say that. How can you say that? It's so, it's almost like bad luck. Don't say it. And she was saying no, because if I think of it like this, then I won't worry about it. And if it goes wrong, then me worrying about it for a month hasn't changed anything. I've just had a bad month as well as a bad election.
I agree with that. I mean, my feeling too is if I'm going to be really upset in a couple months, why be upset now?
Yeah, it's not going to help. Preparing yourself doesn't really.
That's right. It doesn't help.
Okay, one last question, Stephen, that I want to ask you, which is a film book recommendation for our listeners.
Well, we talked about acting, and I'm reading this new book by Justin Rollins called "Imagining the Method," which is about the coverage of methodness in the late 40s and 50s. And so I'll recommend that. It's Imagining the Method and Reception, Identity, and American Screen Performance.
That sounds great.
Hepburn isn't mentioned. But earlier in our conversation, we talked about why stars like Hepburn were not appreciated for acting as opposed to their charisma, their personality, their screen presence, or in the case of women, their glamour and their sexiness, their beauty.
Right.
And for men, it was about their physicality and their action and heroism. And this book really talks about the way in which acting became paramount in the 50s in particular, in discussions of a new crop of actors. And that's not a new idea per se, but the kind of research that looks at publicity and looks at Hedda Hopper's columns and how she talked about actors, fan magazine articles and interviews, both contemporaneous with the men and women, and then subsequent and posthumous, really documents a lot that helps explain both why the method was so compelling a topic, but also how it generalized different schools of acting.
Yeah.
And discounted the conflicts between some of the leading teachers of acting.
I mean, even Stanislavski, you have to say which Stanislavski. I mean, he changed.
Right. I mean, Brando was always been associated with the method, but he didn't study with the actor's studio or the group theater. He studied with Stella Adler, who had many disagreements with Lee Strasberg.
Right.
It was Monroe's teacher when she went to study with the actor's school.
And I think Stella Adler said about Marlon Brando, teaching him to act was like teaching a tiger to be a tiger.
Oh, that's well put.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for the opportunity of finding out some things I didn't know about Audrey Hepburn, who has been one of my favorite sort of classical Hollywood actresses for a long time.
What was your first Audrey Hepburn film that you saw? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was Sabrina.
Ah.
Yeah. I remember Sabrina, and then I remember having a real sort of season, and it was my first year at university, I think, and we would rent videos and watch videos, and a little bit like what you were saying about watching a movie twice, because you got the video for 24 hours, you would rent the video and then watch it 2 or 3 times to sort of get your money's worth.
When I first came to Syracuse, I had an office mate who had arrived the year before, and she was a very, very staunch second wave feminist. And she told me once that she loved Sabrina, which I had seen and just thought of as a Cinderella movie and didn't think through a lot of it. But that's what gave me pause to think there's something else there other than that conventional romance that people are responding to with that film through Hepburn and through Wilder, because I mean Wilder's talent in his directing is significant.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Billy Wilder, not bad, not a bad director. No, absolutely, he's one of the best, I would say.
Yes, I agree.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you so much. By the way, you do have a Billy Wilder book out, or coming out, the Sunset Boulevard.
Well, Sunset Boulevard is out. It's a BFI film classic, and I just put to bed another BFI film classic on Some Like It Hot, which should be out next spring.
Well, you'll have to come back and talk to me for Some Like It Hot then, and I can.
I'd love to.
I can dust off my Tony Curtis impersonation.
Okay. I'll try to dust off Marilyn Monroe.
$1-800-Flowers.com knows that a gift is never just a gift. A gift is an expression of everything you feel and helps to build more meaningful relationships. 1-800-Flowers takes the pressure off by helping you navigate life's important moments by making it simple to find the perfect gift. From flowers and cookies to cake and chocolate, 1-800-Flowers helps guide you in finding the right gift to say how you feel. To learn more, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.